Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Spurs Up. As always, I'm your host, Jack Taylor. I'm by myself today. Derek's out in Greensboro, so we're missing him, but I think I'll be able to manage. So today we have a very special guest on, Mr. Brad Muller. Brad, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So first off, you graduated from the School of Journalism right over here in 1992, I believe?
Yeah, that's correct, and it was actually back when it was at the Coliseum, back in the dungeon. We didn't have the great facilities that you've got here now.
What was it like working in the dungeon?
Well, if the power ever went out, it was very dark, and you just kind of held your breath. But you didn't know any better at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Things were geared a little bit more towards radio at the time. The television production was a lot more primitive. We worked with something that was called Super VHS, which was probably the worst thing that there ever was. We had maybe 2 editing bays for TV for the entire J School, and one was always broken. So a lot of things were geared towards radio, and that's kind of how I started in radio.
So you've been around the city for a while now. Is it cool to see the transformation of the School of Journalism to what it is now?
No, it's fantastic. I love seeing the new school now, and been involved with some classes since I've been back here. And it really is terrific to see how far the J School has come. I was here for 4 years, and then I'd moved to Georgia for 13 years to work, and then moved back here about 13 years ago. But it's been really great to see not just the J School, but this whole university, how much it's transformed.
You mentioned it a little bit there. You said you've taught a couple classes here, and you're teaching one right now. I believe it's a play-by-play class. Is that
Correct.
its official name? Talk about that a little bit.
All right, it's a sports broadcasting class, which we're trying to teach students how to do radio and TV play-by-play. It's geared more towards radio to begin with. This is its first full semester. We did it last fall as an independent study with just 4 students. Now we have 12 students. Greg Brannon leads the charge, is the lead professor on it. And we kind of tag team on it and give them opportunities to do live play-by-play for a lot of sports, whether it's here at USC or some high school as well, and just give them the opportunity to create a demo reel if this is something they want to get into in terms of sports play-by-play.
That's awesome. Of course, now I'm on the way out. They just started to do a sports journalism focus for your major, and that's great for the kids coming in. But I'm like, are you kidding me? Am I have to run 4 years back so I can get that kind of stuff? Because they're adding a bunch of new classes, and I know Dr. Kevin Hall, he's kind of heading that operation, which is just really cool to see. And so, obviously, you are the voice of the women's basketball team. Can you talk about your experience with that?
It's been great. I really lucked out. This is my 13th season with the women's basketball program on the radio broadcast. I got here a year before Coach Staley did, doing the broadcast with the previous coach, and then when Coach Staley was hired, it's been fun to see the progression that she's made every year since she's been here. And we started with a not very good team to becoming a national championship team, a couple of Final Fours, and a lot of conference championships. So it's been fun to be a part of that ride, and it was really just right place, right time. I'd spent 13 years broadcasting at a smaller school and happened to move back here and just kind of fell into it and couldn't be any happier.
So your favorite memory has got to be, at least so far, calling the national championship game.
Well, that certainly checked a box. You don't know if you're ever going to get a chance to do that. I've had the opportunity to actually work 3 national championship games, 2 at the previous school, but had never won one. One was a championship for softball and baseball at the other school, and both teams lost. In fact, both teams got shut out. And so to work the basketball national championship and see them win was great, again, because of how far the program has come. But in this business, when you're in it long enough, you remember certain things like that, certain game-winning shots, but you really, what stays with you is the people that you have a chance to be around, whether it's the former student athletes or the coaches that come and go. That's kind of what you remember a little bit more rather than individual scores. But yeah, a national championship is something I'll never forget.
Now, if I'm correct, you host also the Don Staley, the coaches show, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we do a TV show during the season and then also a call-in show a couple of times as well for local radio.
So what's it like getting to interact with her? She's such a big personality, and then getting to talk to her on air. That's got to be fun, isn't it?
Well, she's great because the cool thing about Coach Dawn Staley, I mean, she's a huge personality and has this great social media presence, but she's just a regular person who wants to do everything well, not just coach basketball and win basketball and things like that. I'll never forget our first pregame interview that we did before the first broadcast where she was the head coach here, and after we recorded our pregame interview, she looked up at me and said, "Did I do okay?" And I said, "Coach, you're great." But she wants to do everything well, and that's really neat. But she's a regular person. I'll never forget about, probably 10 years or so ago, we were at a tournament on the road, and my son had just been born, and I'd taken my family with me, and we were at dinner and my son was crying. We're trying to feed him, and she'd already finished her dinner, and she came over and said, "Give me that baby," and she picked him up and fed him a bottle while my wife and I ate, and she just walked around. I'm just thinking, man, my son doesn't know how good he's got it right now. He's got this legendary basketball player, now coach, Olympic champion, feeding him a bottle, and he had no idea. But that's the kind of person she is.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And so now you don't just do basketball as well. You also do softball and I believe volleyball as well.
Well, I do women's soccer and softball for
SEC
Network Plus, which we launched 5 years ago when the network was launched. I have the opportunity to do that for a lot of the home games and sometimes NCAA tournament games, and that's a lot of fun because those teams have enjoyed a lot of success as well. Coach Shelley Smith and the women's soccer team are always one of the top 10 teams in the country, so it's been great to be a part of that program. And with what Bev Smith has done with softball has been great. Great kids and a great program. So I've had the good fortune to be around 3 really good programs and see a lot of wins.
That's awesome. Now, you've came out of the School of Journalism. You're a product that shows that you can become successful from this school. What is some advice that you would give to kids in the School of Journalism right now as they start to get ready for getting out of college?
Well, for the one thing, especially for what I was doing, but I would think it would go for any job, is go where the job is. I think everybody thinks, well, I want to go to ESPN or CNN or whatever. Well, you're never going to start there, or if you start there, you're going to be getting coffee for the most part, unless you're, absolutely fantastic. But I started out here in Columbia when I graduated in news at WVOC Radio, working in news for a year. And that was a great experience. It was an election year, 1992. I got to cover a lot of things, and then really wanted to work sports radio and went down to Milledgeville, Georgia, to work at a radio station there, where I became the play-by-play guy for a Division II school, Georgia College, and 3 local high schools, as well as a junior college that was there for football, Georgia Military Junior College. And it was just a great opportunity to do what I wanted to do. Didn't make any money that first year. I think at the radio station I made $12,000 a year, which even back in 1993 was nothing. I think I lost 15 pounds my first 6 months down there, and I didn't need to lose 15 pounds because I couldn't eat. But it was worth it because it was a great opportunity to do exactly what I wanted to do and do it 7 days a week, and I absolutely loved it. I later transitioned to continue to do the play-by-play, but actually worked at the college in the athletic office, so I could actually afford to eat and things after that, after a couple of years. But go where the job is. Don't be afraid to go to a small town, to start small. Go somewhere where they'll let you do what you want to do, as opposed to getting coffee or making copies for somebody.
Now, being in the business of play-by-play and color, that's a profession that is normally flooded with former athletes because they know the game. So what is one attribution that you have that you think is the most important that kind of sets you apart if you weren't a former athlete? Or what do you tell your students?
I think the biggest thing is in sports broadcasting, there's 2 things that are huge. There's repetition, and obviously once you get a job, you're going to get better the more reps you have doing a game, doing a sport, doing all kinds of games. But leading up to that is preparation. There's a lot of folks that probably think, hey, I know football, I know baseball, I know basketball, I could call a game, no problem. Okay, well, you need to do preparation when you're making your spotting charts, to have all the information to get you through a broadcast, to make you sound like you know what you're talking about in terms of those individuals. You may know the game, or you think you know the game, but you may not know the individuals, and that's just as important to the broadcast, is doing a lot of homework, over preparing basically, because there's a lot of stuff you'll never use in the broadcast, but you have to have it there. So to me, I think that's one of the most eye-opening things I see with the students that we're trying to train now is there's a lot of preparation that's needed to be good at it, to be comfortable on the air, and I think sometimes that's what goes overlooked.
I was going to say, one of my buddies, Ethan, who's in that class, we were driving back from Tennessee, and he was like, oh no, I need to finish my spotting chart to turn in for the next day. He was like, it takes a lot of time to do that. But finishing up real quick, what is your outlook on the current season for women's basketball? What is your predictions?
Well, it's exciting. With Coach Dawn Staley, anything is possible because she's able to get every ounce of talent out of every player. It's a very young team. You have 5 freshmen, 3 sophomores, and only 3 upperclassmen. So there'll be some bumps here in the road, but with Coach Staley at the helm, I think they're going to do just fine because it is very talented. They have the #1 recruiting class in the nation. So I think you'll see this team get better as the year goes on, and by the time the SEC tournament rolls around, watch out.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for you in the studio today. Thank you again for coming on. This was awesome. And until next time, South Carolina, Spurs up.